This is a Fonzie Studio podcast. Welcome to Tales from the First Nations. I'm Jay Idle, and every week I'll share with you a tale and ancient wisdom of the native tribes of North America. I'll be joined by my cats, Dawa and Fonzie, who will undoubtedly make their presence known at some point, so I might as well just list them as co-host. We hope you'll enjoy the tales and wisdom, raise your vibration, and enrich your life with us every week. Welcome, friends. Welcome to the 82nd episode of Tales from the First Nations. I'm your host, Jay Idle. Today, we continue with part 3 of our 4-part series on stories of marriage. We just have one story today, and it comes from the Pueblo of Isleta. The Pueblo of Isleta is a Pueblo Native American community in central New Mexico with a long history along the Rio Grande. Its people are part of the Tiwa-speaking Pueblo groups and have maintained strong cultural continuity despite centuries of change. Their homeland is located just south of Albuquerque, New Mexico, and was established around 1300 CE. This is their story, The Man Who Married the Moon. And I think you'll notice some similarities to our previous love story in our Marriage Number 2 episode. Long before the first Spaniards came to New Mexico, Isleta stood where it stands today, on a lava ridge that defies the gnawing current of the Rio Grande. In those far days, Nachuruchu, the bluish light of dawn, dwelt in Isleta and was a leader of his people. A weaver by trade, his rude loom hung from the dark rafters of his room, and in it he wove a strong black mantas and robes like those which are the dress of the Pueblo women to this day. Besides being very wise in medicine, Nachuruchu was young and tall and strong and handsome. All the girls of the village thought it was a shame that he did not care to take a wife. For him, the shyest dimples played for him, the whitest teeth flashed out, as the owners passed him in the plaza, but he had no eyes for them. Then, in the custom of the Tiwa, bashful fingers worked wondrous fringed shirts of buckskin or gay awl sheaths, which found their way to his house by unknown messengers. But Nachuruchu paid no more attention to the gifts than to the smiles, and just kept weaving and weaving such mantas as were never seen in the land of the Tiwan before or since. 2 of his admirers were sisters who were called the Yellow Corn Maidens. They were both young and pretty, but they had the evil road, or were witches possessed of a magic power which they always used for ill. When all the other girls gave up, discouraged at Nachuruchu's indifference, the Yellow Corn Maidens kept coming day after day, trying to win his notice. At last, the matter became so annoying to Nachuruchu that he hired the deep-voiced town crier to go through all the streets and announce that in 4 days, Nachuruchu would choose a wife. For dippers to take water from the big earthen jars, the Tiwa used then, as they are used today, little omatas made of gourd. But Nachuruchu, being a great medicine man and very rich, had a dipper of pure pearl, shaped like the gourds, but wonderfully precious. On the 4th day, proclaimed the crier, Nachuruchu will hang his pearl omat at his door. Then every girl who will may throw a handful of cornmeal at it, and she whose meal is well ground that it sticks to the omate, she shall be his wife, the wife of Nachuruchu. When the stranger's news came rolling down the still evening air, there was a great scampering of little moccasined feet. The girls ran out from hundreds of gray adobe houses to catch every word, and when the crier had passed on, they ran back into their storerooms and began to ransack the corn bins for the biggest, evenest, and most perfect ears, shelling the choicest. Each took her few handfuls of kernels and carefully ground it down, scrubbing the blue grist up and down until the hard corn became a soft blue meal. All the next day and the next and the next, they ground it over and over again until it grew finer than ever, finer than any flour there ever was before, and every girl felt sure her meal would stick to the omate of the handsome young weaver. The yellow corn maidens worked hardest of all. Day and night for 4 days they ground and ground with all the magic spells they knew. Now, in those far-off days, the moon had not gone into the sky to live, but was a maiden of Isleta, and a very beautiful girl she was, but blind in one eye. She had long admired Na-Choo-Roo-Choo, but was always too maidenly to try to attract his attention as the other girls had done. And at the time when the crier made his proclamation, she happened to be away at her father's ranch. It was only upon the 4th day that she returned to town, and in a few moments the girls were to go with their meal to test it upon the magic dipper. The 2 yellow corn maidens were just coming from their house as she passed, and they told her what was to be done. They were very confident of their success and hoped to pain her. They laughed derisively as she went running to her home. By this time, a long file of girls was coming to Na-Choo-Roo-Choo's house, outside whose door hung the pearl omate. Each girl carried in her hand a little jar of meal. As they passed the door one by one, each took from the jar a handful and threw it against the magic dipper. But each time the meal dropped to the ground and left the pure pearl undimmed and radiant as ever. At last came the yellow corn maidens, who had waited to watch the failure of the others. As they came where they could see Na-Choo-Roo-Choo sitting in his loom, they called, "Ah, here we have the meal that will stick," and each threw a handful at the omate, but it did not stick at all. And still from his seat, Na-Choo-Roo-Choo could see, in the shell's mirrored-like surface, all that went on outside. The yellow corn maidens were very angry, and instead of passing on as the others had done, they stood there and kept throwing and throwing and throwing at the omate, which smiled back at them with undiminished luster. Just then, last of all, came the moon, with a single handle of meal which she had hastily ground. The 2 sisters were in a fine rage by this time, and mocked her, saying, "Ha, ha, ha, ha! Moon, you poor thing, we are very sorry for you. Here we have been grinding our meal for 4 days, and still it will not stick, and we did not tell you till today. How can you ever hope to win Na-Choo-Roo-Choo? Ah, you silly little thing." But Moon paid no attention whatsoever to their taunts. Drawing back her little dimpled hand, she threw the meal gently against the pearl omate, and so fine was it ground, that every tiny bit of it clung to the polished shell, and not a particle fell to the ground. When Na-Choo-Roo-Choo saw this, he rose up quickly from his loom and came and took the moon by the hand, saying, "You are she who shall be my wife. You shall never want for anything, since I have very much." And he gave her many beautiful mantas and cotton wraps and fat boots of buckskin that wrapped round and around, that she might dress as the wife of a rich chief. But the yellow corn maidens, who had seen it all, went away vowing vengeance on the moon. Na-Choo-Roo-Choo and his sweet moon wife were very happy together. There was no other such housekeeper in all the pueblo as she, and no other hunter brought home so much buffalo meat from the vast plains to eat, nor so many antelopes and black-tailed deer and jackrabbits. But constantly he was saying to her, "Moon wife, beware of the yellow corn maidens, for they have the evil road and will try to do you harm, but you must always refuse to do whatever they propose." And always the young wife promised. One day the Yellow Corn Maidens came to the house and said, "Friend Nachuruchu, we are going to the Llano, the plain, to gather amole." Amole is a soapy root that the Pueblos use for washing. "Will you not let your wife go with us?" "Oh yes, she may go," said Nachuruchu, but taking her aside said, "Now be sure that while you are with them, you refuse whatever they may propose." The moon promised and started away with the Yellow Corn Maidens. In those days, there was only a thick forest of cottonwoods, where now the smiling vineyards, gardens, and orchards of Isleta are spread. And to reach the Llano, the three women had to go through the forest. In the very center of it, they came to a deep pozo, a square well, with steps at one side leading down to the water's edge. "Aye," said the Yellow Corn Maidens, "how hot and thirsty is our walk. Come, let us get a drink of water." But the moon, remembering her husband's words, said politely that she did not wish to drink. They urged in vain, but at last, looking down into the pozo, they called, "Oh, moon friend, come and look at this still water and see how pretty you are." The moon, you must know, has always been just as fond of looking at herself in the water as she is to this very day, and forgetting Nachuruchu's warning, she came to the brink and looked down upon her fair reflection. But at that moment, the two witch sisters pushed her head first into the pozo and drowned her, and then they filled the well with earth and went away as happy as wicked hearts can be. As the sun crept along the abode floor, closer and closer to his seat, Nachuruchu began to look oftener from his loom to the door. When the shadows were very long, he sprang suddenly to his feet and walked to the house of the Yellow Corn Maidens with long, long strides. "Yellow Corn Maidens," he asked them very sternly, "where is my wife?" "Why, isn't she at home?" asked the wicked sisters, as if greatly surprised. "She got enough amole before we did." "Ah," groaned Nachuruchu within himself, "it's as I thought. They have done her ill." But without a word to them, he turned on his heels and went away. From that hour, all went wrong for Isleta. For Nachuruchu held the well-being of his people, even unto life and death, paying no attention to what was going on about him. He sat motionless upon the topmost cross-piece of the kiva, with his head bowed upon his hands. There he sat for days, never speaking, never moving. The children who played along the streets looked up with awe at the motionless figure and ceased their boisterous play. The old men shook their heads gravely and muttered, "We are in evil times, for Nachuruchu is mourning, and we will not be comforted. And there is no more rain, so that our crops are dying in the fields. What shall we do?" At last, all the counselors met together and decided that there must be another effort made to find the lost wife. It was true that the great Nachuruchu had searched for her in vain, and the people had helped him, but perhaps someone else might be more fortunate. So they took some of the sacred smoking weed, wrapped it in a corn husk, and went to the eagle, who has the sharpest eyes in all the world. Giving him the sacred gift, they said, "Eagle friend, we see Nachuruchu in great trouble, for he has lost his moon wife. Come search for her, we pray you, to discover if she be alive or dead." So the eagle took the offering and smoked the smoke prayer, and then he went winged upward into the sky. Higher and higher he rose in great upward circles, while in his keen eye noting every stick and stone and animal on the face of all the world. But with all his eyes, he could see nothing for the lost wife, and at last he came back sadly and said, "People, friends, I went up to where I could see the whole world, but I could not find her." Then the people went with an offering to Coyote, whose nose is sharpest in all the world, and besought him to try and find the moon. The Coyote smoked the smoke prayer and started off with his nose to the ground, trying to find her tracks. He trotted all over the earth, but at last he too came back without finding what he sought. Then the troubled people got the badger to search, for he is the best of all the beasts at digging. It was he whom the Trews employed to dig the caves in which people first dwelled when they came to this world. The badger trotted and pawed and dug everywhere, but he could not find the moon, and he had come home very sad. Then they asked the osprey, who can see the furthest underwater, and he sailed high above the lakes and rivers in the world till he could count the pebbles and the fish in them, but he too failed to discover the lost moon. By this time the crops were dead. The fields were barren, the animals were thirsty, and the rivers were dry. Scarcely could people themselves dig deep enough to find water to keep them alive. They were at a loss, but at last they thought, "We will go now to the water goose grandfather, or turkey buzzard, who can find the dead, for surely she is dead, or the others would have found her." So they went to him and they besought him. The turkey buzzard wept and said that he saw Nachuruchu still sitting there upon the ladder, and said, "Truly it is sad for our great friend, but for me I am afraid to go, since they who are more mighty than I have already failed. Yet I will try." And spreading his broad wings, he went climbing up the spiral ladder of the sky. Higher he wheeled and higher, till at last not even the eagle could see him. Up and up till the sun began to singe his head, and not even the eagle had ever been so high. He cried with pain, but still he kept mounting until he was so close to the sun that all the feathers were burned from his head and neck. But he could see nothing, and at last, frantic with the burning, he came down, wheeling downward. When he got back to the ground where the people were waiting, they saw that his head and neck had been burned bare of feathers, and from that day to this, the feathers would never grow out again. "And did you see nothing?" they all asked when they bathed his burns. "Nothing," he answered, "except that when I was halfway down, I saw in the middle of yon cottonwood forest a little mound covered with all the beautiful flowers in the world." "Oh!" cried Nachuruchu, speaking for the first time. "Go, friend, and bring me one flower from the middle of the mound." Off flew the buzzard, and in a few minutes returned with a little white flower. Nachuruchu took it and descended from the ladder in silence, walked solemnly to his house, where the wandering people followed. When Nachuruchu came inside his home once more, he took a new manta and spread it in the middle of the room. Laying the wee white flower tenderly at its center, he put another manta over it. Then, dressing himself in the splendid buckskin suit that the lost wife had made for him, and taking in his right hand the sacred gradle, he seated himself at the head of the manta and sang, "Shuna, shuna, ae, 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 away. Seeking her, there away, there away." When he had finished the song, all could see that the flower had begun to grow, so that it lifted the upper manta a little. Again he sang, shaking his gourd, and still the flower kept growing. Again and again he sang, and when he had finished for the fourth time, it was plain to all that a human form lay beneath the two mantas. And when he sang his song the fifth time, the form sat up and moved. Tenderly he lifted away the upper cloth, and there sat his sweet moon wife, fairer than ever and as alive as before. For 4 days the people danced and sang in the public square. Nachuruchu was happy again, and now the rain began to fall. The choked earth drank and was glad and green, and the dead crops came back to life. When his wife told him what the witch sisters had done, he was very angry, and that day he made a beautiful hoop to play the hoop game. He painted it and put many strings across it and decorated it with beaded buckskin. "Now," said he, "the wicked yellow corn maidens will come to congratulate you, and will pretend not to know where you were. You must not speak of that, but invite them to go out and play a game with you." In a day or two, the witch sisters did come, with deceitful words, and the moon invited them to go out and play a game. They went to the edge of the Llano, and there she let them get a glimpse of the pretty hoop. "Oh, give us that, moon friend," they teased, but she refused. At last, however, she said, "Well, We will play the hoop game. I will stand here and you there, and if, when I roll it to you, you catch it before it falls upon its side, you may have it." So the witch sister stood a little ways down the hill, and she rolled the bright hoop. As it came rolling towards them, both grasped it at the same time. And lo, instead of the yellow corn maidens, they were two great snakes, with tears rolling down their ugly faces. The moon came and put up their heads, a little of the pollen of the corn blossom, still used by the Pueblo snake charmers, to tame them, and a pinch of sacred meal for their food. "Now," she said, "you have the reward of treacherous friends. Here shall be your home among these rocks and cliffs forever, but you must never be found upon the prairie, and you must never bite a person. Remember, you are women and must be gentle." And then the moon went home to her husband, and they were very happy together. As for the sister snakes, they still dwell where she bade them, and never venture away, though sometimes the people bring them to their houses to catch mice, for these snakes never hurt a person. In view of Pueblo esteem for snakes, the sisters' punishment is a mild one. Some Pueblo tribes view snakes as rain bringers and the heroes of Pueblo myths, sometimes merry snake maidens, as in the Hopi Boy in the Sun. According to a government report of 1900, the superstitious regard of the Indians for snakes, inasmuch as they hold a prominent part in religious rites, protects them and renders them abundant among the villages. A snake, on being found in the Pueblo, is merely carried off on sticks and laid outside of man's immediate range. Something you'll notice from that is that when the wicked corn maidens were turned into snakes, they became gentler and kinder beings. I guess it's good that we all become gentler and kinder beings. It's with respect and gratitude that I offer you my blessings, and thank you for sharing your journey with me and sharing your time with me on this podcast. I wish you well and look forward to sharing another story with you next week. Go in peace, return in peace, and may you be well. If you enjoy the podcast, please give us a like and review on your podcast service provider. Feel free to tell friends and family about us as well. It will be wonderful to share the stories. Our story today comes from the now defunct PyramidMesa.com. The Man Who Married the Moon was published by Charles F. Loomis in St. Nicholas Magazine in 1897. For more great stories and legends, join me next week for another story here on Tales from the First Nations. I'm Jay Idle, and I'll talk to you next time. This beautiful song is provided by Scott Brocklesby, and our podcast Image of the Moon was provided by Mark Lawton. We will see you next time. All right, that's it. How'd we do, Dawa? Awesome. Phones? Excellent. Then I'll share it.